They said she was broken. They said she was wolfless trash who deserved to starve in the cold. Clara didn't just lose her mate. She lost her dignity, her family, and her future in a single night. But fate has a funny way of twisting the knife before it heals the wound. When the terrifying Alpha King arrived with his feral, traumatized son, the entire pack held its breath. The boy growled, baring his fangs at the one wolf everyone despised. Everyone expected blood. Absolutely no one expected Clara to kneel or for the king's son to choose her as his mother. This is the story of how the lowest Omega brought the highest king to his knees. The rain in Blackwood Valley didn't wash things clean. It just made the mud stickier. Clara wiped a streak of grease from her forehead, her hands trembling slightly as she scrubbed the countertop of Louie's diner. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. The diner was empty, except for 2 enforcers from the local pack, sitting in the corner booth, nursing cold coffees and watching her with predatory amusement. "Hey, Runt," one of them called out. It was Carter, a bulky beta with a scar running through his left eyebrow. He kicked his muddy boot out intentionally, smearing dirt onto the floor Clara had just mopped. "You missed a spot." Clara didn't look up. She couldn't. Eye contact was viewed as a challenge, and a challenge from an Omega. Especially a broken one, like her, resulted in a trip to the pack infirmary, if the infirmary would even take her. "I'll get it, Carter," Clara whispered, her voice hoarse from days of silence. She grabbed the mop bucket, the grey water sloshing over the rim and soaking into her worn-out canvas sneakers. "That sir to you, reject," Carter sneered. The bell above the diner door jingled. The scent of ozone and pine hit Clara before she even turned around. It was Brody, the future alpha of the Blackwood pack, and the man who had rejected her 3 months ago. The air in the diner grew heavy. Clara's wolf, dormant and weak, whimpered deep in her chest. She gripped the mop handle so tight, her knuckles turned white. Brody didn't come in alone. Hanging off his arm was Jessica, the beta female he had chosen instead. Jessica was everything Clara wasn't: curvaceous, loud, and radiating confidence. She wore a designer coat that probably cost more than Clara made in a year. "Ugh, it smells like wet dog in here," Jessica complained, wrinkling her nose as she looked directly at Clara. "Just ignore it, babe," Brody said, his voice cold. He didn't even look at Clara. To him, she was furniture. Less than furniture. She was a stain on his reputation. The day he turned 18 and realized his fated mate was the pack's mute orphan, he had publicly rejected her in front of the entire pack council. He claimed her weakness would pollute the bloodline. Clara moved to the back, trying to make herself invisible, but Jessica wasn't done. She unzipped her purse and pulled out a $20 bill. "Hey, waitress," Jessica barked. Clara froze. She turned slowly. Jessica crumpled the bill and tossed it onto the wet floor, right into the puddle of dirty water Carter had made. "We're not eating here, but consider that a tip. Buy yourself some better shampoo. You're embarrassing the pack." The enforcers laughed. Brody just stared at the wall, his jaw tight. Clara stared at the money. She needed it. She was 3 months behind on the rent for the leaky shack on the outskirts of the territory. If she didn't pay by Friday, she'd be rogue, and rogues didn't survive long in these woods. Slowly, painfully, Clara knelt. The cold water soaked into the knees of her jeans. She reached for the wet, crumpled bill. Snap. Jessica took a photo with her phone, the flash blinding Clara for a second. "Posting that to the pack group chat," Jessica giggled. "Caption, 'The reject knows her place.'" Brody finally spoke. "Enough, Jess. Let's go. My father is waiting. The royal entourage arrives tomorrow." The mood in the room shifted instantly. The enforcers sat up straighter. Even Jessica stopped smiling. The royal entourage, King Dominic. The Alpha King was coming to Blackwood. It was a rare, terrifying honor. King Dominic was known as the Blood King in the whispers of the lower wolves. Rumor had it he hadn't smiled since his queen died 4 years ago. He ruled with an iron fist, traveling from pack to pack to ensure loyalty and enforce the old laws. And he was bringing his son, Prince Toby, the cursed pup. I heard the kid is a monster, Carter whispered to the other enforcer as Brody and Jessica left. 7 years old and hasn't shifted, hasn't spoken, just growls and bites. They say he took a chunk out of a nanny's arm in the Northern Territories. If the king can't control his own pup, maybe the kingdom isn't as stable as we think, the other enforcer muttered. Watch your mouth, Carter hissed. If the king hears you, he'll rip your throat out. Clara stood up, clutching the wet $20 bill. She didn't care about kings or princes. She just wanted to survive the night. But as she looked out the rain-streaked window at the retreating taillights of Brody's truck, she felt a strange shiver crawl up her spine. A premonition. The king was coming. And for some reason, Clara felt like the storm he was bringing was meant specifically for her. The next morning, Blackwood Valley was unrecognizable. The muddy streets had been power-washed flags bearing the royal crest, a gold wolf on a black shield hung from every lamppost, and the pack house was buzzing with frantic energy. Alpha Sterling, Brody's father, was in a state of panic. I want the perimeter tightened, Sterling roared at his beta. A man named Mr. Henderson. If a single rogue gets within a mile of the king, I will have your head on a spike. Clara naturally was assigned the worst job possible. While the rest of the pack dressed in their finest formal wear to greet the king at the main plaza, Clara was ordered to the kitchens of the pack house to scrub pots. Stay out of sight. Alpha Sterling had told her personally that morning, gripping her chin with bruising force. King Dominic values strength. If he sees a weak, broken thing like you, he might think our whole pack is weak. If you show your face, Clara, I will banish you. So Clara scrubbed. She scrubbed until her hands were raw and red. The sounds of the ceremony drifted in through the open window. She heard the roar of engines, heavy military-grade SUVs. She heard the collective gasp of the pack. She heard the silence that fell when the king stepped out. She imagined him. A monster. A giant. By 2:00 p.m. the ceremony was over, and the high-ranking wolves moved into the pack house for the banquet. The kitchen became a war zone. Chefs were screaming, plates were crashing. Clara, the head cook. A formidable woman named Martha shouted, "We're short-handed. The servers are overwhelmed. You need to run this tray of hors d'oeuvres to the Alpha's private lounge." Now, but Alpha Sterling said, "I don't care what Sterling said. The king is demanding service and my best server just fainted from stress. Go. Keep your head down. Don't speak. Drop the tray and get out." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She wiped her hands on her apron, smoothed down her fraying uniform, and picked up the heavy silver platter loaded with rare steak tartare. She walked through the service corridors, the noise of the banquet fading into a hushed tension as she approached the private lounge. The door was slightly ajar. She pushed it open with her hip. The room was filled with the scent of expensive cigars, aged whiskey and something else, something powerful, like a thunderstorm trapped in a bottle. It was the scent of an Alpha Prime. Alpha Sterling was there, sweating profusely. Brody was there, looking pale. And sitting in the large leather armchair in the center of the room was a man who made the air feel thin. King Dominic. He was massive. He wasn't wearing a suit like the others. He wore a black tactical shirt that strained against his biceps and dark cargo pants. His dark hair was cropped short, and a neatly trimmed beard framed a face that looked like it was carved from granite. His eyes were the color of molten gold, and they were currently bored. But Clara didn't look at him for long. Her eyes were drawn to the corner of the room. Crouched behind a decorative plant hiding in the shadows was a small boy. He looked about 7. His hair was messy and black, just like his father's, but his clothes and expensive velvet suit were torn at the collar. He was shaking. "Your Majesty," Alpha Sterling was saying, his voice trembling. "We have the finest training facilities for the prince. If he is having behavioral issues, our trainers are excellent." King Dominic didn't look at Sterling. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "My son does not need training, Sterling. He needs peace, which is why I specifically requested a quiet arrival. Yet you greeted me with a marching band. I apologized for that, sire. We wanted to show respect." "You showed vanity," Dominic said softly. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Clara moved forward, trying to be invisible. She set the tray down on the side table. Her hands were steady despite her fear. "And who is this?" Dominic asked. Clara froze. She hadn't expected him to notice her. Alpha Sterling's head snapped toward her. His eyes widened in fury. "She is nobody, Your Majesty. Just kitchen staff. Get out, Clara. Now!" Clara dipped her head, turning to flee. Grrr. The sound came from the corner. It was a low, guttural growl, far too deep for a human child, yet too high for a full-grown wolf. Everyone turned to look at the boy, Prince Toby. The boy had emerged from behind the plant. His eyes were peeped and the pupils blown. He was looking directly at Clara. His lips were pulled back, revealing teeth that looked sharper than a child's should be. "Toby," Dominic said, his voice warning. "Stand down." But the boy didn't listen. He took a step toward Clara, his growl increasing in volume. It was a sound of pure aggression. "He's going to attack her," Brody said, stepping back. "Guard. No guards," Dominic commanded, standing up. Clara was trapped. The door was behind the king. The boy was between her and the exit. She was an Omega. Her instinct screamed at her to submit, to roll over, to show her throat. The boy lunged. He didn't shift, but he moved with the speed of a predator. He rushed at Clara, stopping just 2 feet in front of her. He let out a vicious, snapping bark. His small hands curled into claws. "Get back!" Sterling shouted at Clara. "You're provoking him with your scent!" Clara looked at the boy. Really looked at him. She didn't see a monster. She saw the terror in his eyes. She saw the way he was favoring his left leg. She saw the sensory overload, the loud voices, the strong smells of the alphas, the fear in the room. He wasn't attacking. He was cornered. Clara did the unthinkable. She ignored the Alpha King. She ignored her alpha. She turned her body completely toward the growling prince. "Don't look him in the eyes," Dominic ordered, taking a step forward. Clara ignored him too. She slowly, deliberately lowered herself to the floor. She didn't bow in the traditional wolf submission pose, exposing the neck. Instead, she knelt on both knees, sitting back on her heels, making herself small. She kept her hands open, palms up, resting on her thighs. The room went dead silent. "What is she doing?" Brody hissed. "She's going to get killed." Toby growled again, right in Clara's face. He was close enough that she could feel his breath. Clara didn't flinch. She lowered her gaze to his chest, not challenging him, but not cowering either. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "It's loud in here, isn't it?" she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. Toby stopped growling. He blinked. "Too many big voices," Clara whispered again. "Too many smells." Toby tilted his head. The wild look in his eyes flickered. "I have a secret spot," Clara murmured, keeping her body perfectly still. "Behind the kitchen. It smells like vanilla and rain there, not like cigars." Toby took a step closer. He sniffed the air around her. Clara smelled like cheap soap rain, and beneath the layer of fear, a profound, calming warmth. An omega scent, but not weak. Resilient. Then the moment that froze the blood of every wolf in the room happened. The feral prince, who had bitten 3 nannies and growled at the king himself that morning, stepped into the space between Clara's knees. He didn't attack. He placed his small, trembling hand on Clara's shoulder. Clara didn't pull away. She slowly raised her arms. Toby climbed. He scrambled onto her lap, burying his face into the crook of her neck, wrapping his legs around her waist. He let out a long, shuddering sigh, and the tension left his small body. He fell completely still, clinging to the rejected Omega, as if she were the only life raft in a stormy ocean. Clara wrapped her arms around him instinctively, rocking him slightly. She rested her chin on the top of his messy hair. For 10 seconds, no one breathed. King Dominic stared. His golden eyes were wide, the boredom completely gone, replaced by a shock so profound it looked like pain. He looked from his son, who was finally calm, to the woman in the faded waitress uniform holding him. "Who?" King Dominic said, his voice low and dangerous. "Is she?" Alpha Sterling looked like he was about to vomit. She is no one, my king. Clara. She is damaged goods. An Omega." Dominic walked across the room. The power radiating off him was suffocating. He stopped in front of Clara and his son. Clara looked up, her blue eyes meeting the king's gold ones. She was terrified, but she tightened her hold on the boy. "Mine," her wolf whispered. "Protect." Dominic looked down at her. He saw the grease stain on her forehead. He saw the frayed collar of her shirt, and he saw the way his son's hand was gripping her shirt so tight his knuckles were white. "She is not no one," Dominic said, his voice vibrating through the floorboards. "She is the first person my son has touched in 2 years without drawing blood." He crouched down, bringing himself to Clara's eye level. The proximity was overwhelming. He smelled like cedar and power. "What is your name?" Dominic asked. Not a command. A question. "Clara." "Your Majesty," she whispered. Dominic stared at her for a long beat. "Well, Clara, it seems you have been promoted." "Promoted?" Clara blinked. "You are no longer kitchen staff," Dominic declared, standing up and looking at Alpha Sterling with cold disdain. "As of this moment, she is the royal nanny, and she answers only to me." Brody's mouth fell open. "But, Your Majesty, she's my rejected mate. She's an Omega." Dominic turned to Brody, his lip curling in a snarl that made Brody flinch back. "Then you are a fool," Dominic rumbled, "because she just tamed the wolf that even I could not." The transition was jarring. 1 minute Clara was scrubbing grease traps. The next she was being escorted by 2 royal guards, imposing men named Officer Miller and Lieutenant Grey, to the penthouse suite of the pack house which had been commandeered for the king. She still had Toby in her arms. The boy refused to let go. Every time someone tried to separate them, a low rumble would start in his chest, and Clara would soothe him back into silence. "This way, Miss Clara," Lieutenant Grey said. He was respectful, a stark contrast to the Blackwood enforcers. They entered the suite. It was luxurious, larger than Clara's entire shack. But Clara felt like an imposter. She was filthy. She smelled like diner food. "I need to wash," Clara whispered to the lieutenant. I can't hold the prince like this." "The king has ordered that you remain with the prince until he falls asleep," Grey replied. "Whatever the prince wants, he gets." The door to the master bedroom opened, and King Dominic entered. He had removed his tactical vest, leaving him in a tight black t-shirt. He looked tired. He stopped when he saw Clara standing awkwardly in the middle of the room with his son. "Toby," Dominic said softly, "you need to let Clara breathe." Toby tightened his grip. Clara patted the boy's back. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere, but I need to sit down. My legs are tired. Are yours tired?" Toby pulled back slightly, looking at her face. He nodded once. "Okay, let's sit." Clara walked over to the massive velvet sofa and sat down. Toby scrambled to sit right next to her, his thigh pressed against hers. Dominic watched the interaction with intense scrutiny. He walked over to the wet bar and poured 2 glasses of water. He brought one to Clara. "Drink," he said. Clara took the glass with a shaking hand. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Dominic," he corrected. "When we are in private, it is Dominic." Clara nearly choked on the water. I couldn't." "You are holding my air," Dominic said, sitting in the armchair opposite them. "Formalities seem redundant. Tell me, Clara, why did he climb on you? What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Clara said honestly. I knelt." "Everyone else runs, or fights," Dominic murmured. "Sterling said you were rejected." "Why?" Clara looked down at the water glass. "Brody. He wanted a strong Luna. Someone with a powerful wolf. My wolf is quiet. I'm just an Omega. I don't have high status or money. He said I would make the pack look weak." Dominic's eyes narrowed. "Strength isn't about how loud you can roar, Clara. It's about who you can protect." He looked at his son, who was now eyelids drooping, fighting sleep. "Toby hasn't slept through the night since his mother died. He has night terrors. He shifts in his sleep and wakes up tearing the room apart." "He's afraid," Clara said softly. "He's an alpha bloodline," Dominic argued, though his tone was weary. "He shouldn't feel fear like this." "He's a little boy," Clara countered, surprising herself with her boldness. "Alpha or not, he lost his mom, and everyone looks at him like he's a ticking time bomb. Of course he's scared." Dominic fell silent. He looked at Clara with a new expression, curiosity. "You speak your mind," he noted. "I have nothing left to lose, Your Majesty," Clara said. "Brody took my reputation. The pack took my dignity. All I have is the truth." Toby's head slumped onto Clara's shoulder. He was asleep. "Do not move," Dominic ordered, standing up. "I will get a blanket." He returned with a heavy fur throw and draped it over his son and Clara. His hand brushed Clara's shoulder, and a spark of electricity, hot and jarring, shot through her. Dominic froze. He felt it too. Clara's breath hitched. She looked up at him. His golden eyes were dilated. No, Clara thought. "It's impossible. I'm rejected. I can't have another mate." But the way Dominic was looking at her, like he was a starving man, and she was a feast. "Rest, Clara," Dominic said, his voice rough. He stepped back, putting distance between them. "We leave for the capital in the morning. You are coming with us." "The capital," Clara whispered. But I can't leave. I actually have nothing here. Exactly, Dominic said. Pack your things, or don't. I will buy you everything you need. You are under my protection now. He turned to leave the room, but stopped at the door. And Clara. Yes. If Brody or Sterling tries to speak to you before we leave, tell them that if they upset the royal nanny, they answer to the king. The next morning was chaos. News had spread through Blackwood Valley that the rejected runt was leaving with the king. The pack was in an uproar. Some said Clara had bewitched the king. Others said she was being taken as a prisoner for offending the prince. Brody and Jessica were waiting by the SUVs as Clara walked out of the pack house. Clara looked different. She had showered, and though she was wearing her own simple jeans and a sweater, she walked with her head higher. Toby was holding her hand tightly, glaring at anyone who came too close. So, Jessica sneered as Clara passed. Going to be the king's servant now fitting. Maybe you can scrub his toilets. Clara stopped. She looked at Jessica. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the urge to look away. I'm the prince's caretaker, Clara said calmly. You're a joke, Brody spat, stepping forward. You think because the kid likes you, you're special. You're still the same weak omega I threw away. The king will tire of you in a week and dump you on the side of the road. Toby let out a low growl. Suddenly, a heavy hand landed on Brody's shoulder. Brody spun around and found himself chest to chest with King Dominic. You are speaking to a member of the royal household, Dominic said quietly. The air around them seemed to vibrate. Insult her again, and I will strip you of your alpha title right here in front of your pack. Brody turned pale. Your Majesty, I didn't mean... Get in the car, Clara, Dominic said, not looking away from Brody. As they drove to the private airstrip, the atmosphere in the car was tense. Clara sat in the back with Toby. Dominic sat in the front passenger seat. They arrived at the airfield where the royal jet, a sleek black Gulfstream, with the gold wolf insignia, was waiting. But there was a problem. A group of elders from the Blackwood pack was blocking the tarmac. Dominic got out of the car, his face a mask of fury. What is the meaning of this? An elderly man. Elder Thomas stepped forward. Your Majesty, we cannot allow you to take the girl. She is a subject of Blackwood. She has debts, and there are laws about taking unmated females across territory lines without the Alpha's permission. It was a power play. Sterling was trying to exert control one last time, using the elders as a shield. Dominic laughed. It was a dark, terrifying sound. Debts? How much? She owes 3 months' rent and fees for her existence, Thomas said. $5,000. Dominic snapped his fingers. His personal assistant, a sharp woman named Silas, stepped forward and wrote a check. She handed it to Thomas. Paid, Dominic said. Now move. There is still the matter of the Alpha's permission, Thomas stammered. Alpha Sterling has not released her. Clara watched from the car window, her heart pounding. She was going to be left behind. She knew it. They would drag her back to the diner. Toby squeezed her hand. Papa won't let them, the boy said. It was the first time he had spoken a full sentence to her. Dominic looked at the elders, then he looked back at the car. He walked over and opened the rear door. Clara, step out. Clara stepped out onto the tarmac. The wind whipped her hair around her face. These men say you belong to Blackwood, Dominic said, his voice carrying over the wind, that you are subject to their alpha. Clara looked at the ground. I was born here. Look at me, Dominic commanded. Clara looked up. Do you want to stay? No, she said instantly. No, I hate it here. Dominic turned to the elders. She hates it here. It doesn't matter what she wants, Elder Thomas shouted. Pack law states. I am the law, Dominic roared. The force of his voice caused the elders to stumble back. His eyes glowed a brilliant, blinding gold. "I am the Alpha King. My word overrides every local statute, every petty Alpha decree, and I declare that Clara of Blackwood is no longer of this pack." He turned to Clara. He took a knife from his belt. Clara flinched. "Give me your hand," Dominic said gently. Clara extended her hand. Dominic made a small, shallow cut on his own thumb, then a tiny nick on Clara's palm. He pressed their hands together. "I, King Dominic Alpha, of the Royal Obsidian Pack, claim Clara as a member of my pack. Her debts are mine. Her enemies are mine. Her home is with me." The air crackled with magic. A bond snapped into place, not a mating bond, but a pack bond, deep, ancient, and unbreakable. Clara felt the heavy, suffocating weight of the Blackwood link shatter, replaced by the cool steel strength of the royal pack. She gasped. She felt stronger. Dominic released her hand. He turned to the stunned elders. "She is Obsidian Pack now. Touch her, and you declare war on the crown." He guided Clara toward the jet. "Let's go home." As Clara walked up the stairs of the jet, she looked back one last time. She saw Brody standing in the distance, watching. He looked small, insignificant. She turned away and stepped into the cabin. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the rejected Omega. She was the King's. Well, she didn't know what she was yet, but she knew she was safe. The royal capital was nothing like the muddy, rustic town of Blackwood. It was a sprawling metropolis of steel and glass built into the side of a massive mountain range. At the very peak sat the Obsidian Palace, a fortress of black stone that seemed to pierce the clouds. For Clara, it was terrifying. She had been given a suite next to Toby's room. It was larger than the entire diner she used to work in. The sheets were silk, the floors were heated marble, and the closet was filled with clothes she was too afraid to touch. But luxury didn't mean safety. "The king has a new stray," a voice whispered as Clara walked down the corridor with Toby 3 days after their arrival. Clara tightened her grip on Toby's hand. 2 maids were pretending to dust a vase, eyeing her with open disdain. "An Omega from the sticks," the other maid giggled. "I give her a week before Lady Sophia chases her out. You know, Sophia has been trying to get into the king's bed since the Queen died." Toby let out a low rumble in his throat. "Shh, Toby," Clara whispered, kneeling down to check his shoes. "Ignore them. Lions don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep." Toby looked at her, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. It was the first time he had almost smiled. Life in the palace fell into a routine. Clara would wake Toby up, help him dress. He refused to let the valets touch him, and they would eat breakfast together in the solarium. Dominic was rarely there. He was buried in council meetings, dealing with rogue attacks on the southern borders. But his presence was felt everywhere, especially by Lady Sophia. Sophia was the daughter of a high-ranking duke. She was tall, stunningly beautiful with platinum blonde hair, and possessed the sharp, calculating eyes of a viper. One afternoon, Clara was in the royal gardens with Toby. The boy was digging in the dirt, something the previous nannies had forbidden, but Clara encouraged. He was planting flower seeds. "You must be the nanny," a cool voice said. Clara looked up. Lady Sophia was standing there, flanked by 2 guards. She wore a white dress that looked pristine against the green grass. "I am Clara, yes," Clara said, standing up and wiping dirt from her jeans. Sophia looked her up and down, curling her lip. "I heard Dominic picked you up from a roadside diner. It shows." "Is there something you need, my lady?" Clara asked, keeping her voice steady. "I need you to understand your place." Sophia stepped closer, lowering her voice so the guards couldn't hear. Dominic is grieving. He is vulnerable. He might think he feels some connection to you because you're good with the boy. But don't mistake gratitude for affection. You are an omega. You are a placeholder until he marries someone of his own station. Someone like me. Toby stood up. He had a handful of mud. Before Clara could stop him, Toby hurled the mud. It splattered right across Lady Sophia's white dress. "You little beast!" Sophia shrieked, raising her hand as if to strike the prince. Clara moved faster than she ever had in her life. She caught Sophia's wrist in mid-air. The contact sent a shock wave through Clara. She wasn't an alpha, but the instinct to protect the cub gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. "Do not," Clara hissed, her eyes flashing, "raise a hand to the prince." Sophia tried to yank her hand back, but Clara held fast for a second longer before releasing her. "You will regret this," Sophia seethed. "I will have you thrown in the dungeons." She stormed off. That night, Clara expected to be fooled. She sat in Toby's room, reading him a story about a wolf who learned to fly, waiting for the guards to come and drag her away. Instead, the door opened, and King Dominic walked in. He looked exhausted. His tie was undone, and his sleeves were rolled up. He leaned against the doorframe, watching Clara read. Clara stopped. "Your Majesty, about today. Lady Sophia." "I heard," Dominic said. He walked into the room. Clara braced herself. "Toby shouldn't have thrown the mud. I should have stopped him. But she was threatening you," Dominic finished. He sat on the edge of Toby's bed. Toby immediately crawled over and rested his head on Dominic's leg. It was a small gesture, but it made Dominic's eyes soften. "Sophia filed a formal complaint," Dominic said quietly. "She said you assaulted her." Clara's heart dropped. "I just stopped her from hitting Toby." Dominic looked at Clara. The intensity of his gaze made the air in the room feel heavy and hot. "I know. The guards saw everything. Sophia has been banned from the private wing." Clara let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Oh." "You protected my son," Dominic said. He reached out his large hand, covering Clara's small one, where it rested on the storybook. "No one has defended him like that. Not even me, sometimes. I've been too busy being king to be a father." "You're a good father," Clara whispered. The heat from his hand was traveling up her arm, setting her skin on fire. "He loves you. He just misses his mom." The mention of the Queen made Dominic flinch. He pulled his hand away and stood up, walking to the window. "Toby was there," Dominic said, his voice devoid of emotion. "When she died. It was a rogue ambush on the road. I wasn't there. The guards were slaughtered. They found Toby hiding under her body. He hasn't spoken since." "He speaks to me," Clara said softly. "He told me he saw the Red-Eye Man." Dominic froze. He spun around. "What did you say?" "He told me yesterday," Clara explained. "He said the Red-Eye Man made the car crash, not wolves, a man." Dominic's face turned pale, then dark with rage. The official report said it was a pack of rogues, wild wolves. No man was mentioned. Maybe the child saw something the investigators missed," Clara suggested. Dominic looked at his son, who was fast asleep. Then he looked at Clara. The look was no longer just gratitude. It was partnership. "If there was a man," Dominic growled, "then it wasn't a random attack. It was an assassination, and the killer is still out there." He walked back to Clara, stopping inches from her. She had to tilt her head back to look at him. "You are in danger here, Clara," he murmured. "If Toby is starting to remember, and you are the one unlocking those memories. Whoever killed my wife will come for you next." "I'm not afraid," Clara lied. She was terrified. Dominic raised his hand and brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek. "You should be. But don't worry. I won't let them touch you." For a moment, Clara thought he was going to kiss her. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The scent of him, cedar rain and power, was overwhelming. Then he pulled back. "Get some sleep, Clara. Tomorrow is the winter solstice ball. All the pack alphas are attending." "Do I have to go?" Clara asked, dread pooling in her stomach. "Yes," Dominic said, his eyes hardening. "Brody and Sterling will be there, and I want them to see exactly what they threw away." The ballroom of the Obsidian Palace was a masterpiece of intimidation. Black marble floors, crystal chandeliers that dripped like icicles, and hundreds of the most powerful wolves in the kingdom, posturing and growling in their tuxedos and gowns. Clara stood at the top of the grand staircase, her legs shaking. Silas, the king's assistant, had spent 3 hours preparing her. Gone were the jeans and the oversized sweaters. Clara wore a gown of deep midnight blue velvet that hugged every curve she didn't know she had. It was slit up the leg, revealing silver heels. Her hair, usually a messy bun, fell in soft dark waves down her back. She wore no jewelry except for a silver hairpin, the symbol of the royal house. "Chin up," Silas whispered from behind her. "You represent the king now." Clara took a deep breath and descended the stairs. The room went silent. Wolves have keen senses. They smelled her before they saw her. They smelled the omega scent, yes, but it was wrapped in the undeniable, potent scent of the Alpha King. She smelled like him. At the bottom of the stairs, King Dominic was waiting. He wore a black tuxedo that made his shoulders look impossibly broad. When he saw Clara, his conversation with the French Alpha died in his throat. He didn't just look at her, he devoured her with his eyes. He walked to the base of the stairs and extended his hand. "You look dangerous, Clara." Clara took his hand. "Is that a compliment?" "The highest one I can give." He led her onto the floor. The music started a slow, heavy waltz. Dominic pulled her close, his hand firm on her waist. "Everyone is staring," Clara whispered, feeling hundreds of eyes on her back. "Let them stare," Dominic murmured into her ear. "Let them wonder why the Omega looks like a queen." As they danced, the crowd parted. But in the corner, Clara saw them. Alpha Sterling Brody and Jessica. They looked out of place. Sterling looked nervous, sweating in his suit. Brody looked angry. Jessica looked like she had swallowed a lemon. When the music stopped, Dominic had to step away to greet a foreign dignitary. "Stay with the guards," he told Clara. "Do not wander." But the moment Dominic's back was turned, Brody intercepted her. He grabbed her arm and pulled her into the shadow of a large pillar. "Get off me!" Clara hissed, trying to yank her arm away. "Who do you think you are?" Brody snarled, his eyes flashing beta yellow. "Parading around in a stolen dress, acting like you belong here. You're a waitress, Clara, a broken little nothing." "I belong where the king says I belong," Clara said, her voice stronger than it had ever been with him. "And he says I belong here." "He's using you," Jessica chimed in, stepping out from behind Brody. She looked fearful, but spiteful. "He's just trying to make a point. Once he's bored, you'll come crawling back to Blackwood." "I would rather die than go back to you," Clara said coldly. Brody gripped her arm tighter, bruising the skin. "You don't get to speak to me like that. I am an alpha. You submit to me." "She submits to no one but me." The voice was a low rumble that shook the champagne glasses on the nearby trays. King Dominic appeared behind Brody. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. The aura of death radiating off him was enough. Brody released Clara instantly, backing away with his hands up. "Your Majesty, we were catching up." "I saw you touch her," Dominic said. His eyes were glowing so bright they looked like two suns. "I told you at the airfield, if you touch her, you declare war." "Dominic, wait," Clara said, putting a hand on the king's chest. She could feel his heart pounding a war drum. "Don't cause a scene. Not here. Not in front of the council." Dominic looked down at her hand on his chest. He covered it with his own. The rage slowly receded, but the threat remained. "Get out of my sight," Dominic ordered Brody. "If you are still in my city by midnight, I will have you hunted for sport." Brody and Jessica fled, disappearing into the crowd. "Are you hurt?" Dominic asked, inspecting her arm. There was a faint red mark. His jaw tightened. "I'm fine," Clara said. "Really? Thank you." Suddenly the lights in the ballroom flickered. Then total darkness. Screams erupted, the sound of glass shattering. "Clara, get down!" Dominic roared. But Clara didn't drop. Her instinct screamed one thing, Toby. Toby wasn't at the party. He was upstairs in his room with the guards. But if the lights were out here, the security system was down everywhere. "Toby!" Clara shouted. She didn't wait for Dominic. She kicked off her heels and ran barefoot through the dark ballroom, dodging panicked guests. She sprinted up the grand staircase, hiking up her velvet dress. She could hear the sounds of fighting in the corridors above. Growls, the clash of steel. She reached the third floor, the royal wing. The two guards outside Toby's door were on the floor unconscious, or worse. The door was open. Clara burst into the room. The balcony doors were wide open, letting in the freezing winter wind. A figure dressed in black tactical gear was standing over Toby's bed. The figure had a syringe in his hand. Toby was huddled in the corner, his eyes glowing, growling that same feral growl from the diner. "Get away from him!" Clara screamed. She grabbed a heavy brass lamp from the bedside table and swung it with all her might. The assassin turned, but not fast enough. The lamp connected with his helmet, cracking the visor. He stumbled back, dropping the syringe. He snarled a human sound, not a wolf, and drew a knife. "You shouldn't have interfered, girl," a voice distorted by the helmet said. He lunged. Clara threw herself over Toby, shielding his body with hers. She felt the cold bite of steel as the knife slashed across her shoulder. She cried out, but didn't let go of the boy. "Clara!" Toby screamed. The assassin raised the knife for a killing blow. Then a massive black shape tore through the room. King Dominic fully shifted into his wolf form, a gigantic beast of midnight fur, and golden eyes slammed into the assassin. The impact sent them both crashing through the balcony doors and over the edge, tumbling into the snowy garden 3 stories below. Clara gasped, clutching her bleeding shoulder. "Toby, are you okay?" Toby was crying. He pressed his small hands against her wound. "Blood? You're bleeding." "It's okay," Clara whispered, her vision blurring. "I'm okay." Guards swarmed the room seconds later. Lieutenant Gray was there, shouting orders. "Medic! We need a medic!" Clara slumped against the bed. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was Dominic back in human form, climbing over the balcony railing. He was covered in snow and blood not his own. He rushed to her, his face a mask of pure terror. "Clara." He gathered her into his arms. "Stay with me. That is an order. Stay with me." Clara whispered, her words slurring. The man, he had red eyes. Then everything went black. Pain radiated through Clara's shoulder, but the warmth holding her hand was stronger. She blinked open her eyes to see King Dominic sitting by her bedside. The terrifying Alpha King looked wrecked, his eyes bloodshot, his tactical shirt rumpled. "You're awake," he breathed, his voice cracking. He pressed a kiss to her uninjured hand. "I thought I lost you." "Toby," Clara rasped. "Safe," Dominic promised. "He's guarding your door with half the army." He refused to leave. His gaze hardened, shifting from relief to cold fury. "The assassin is dead, but we found the money trail. It leads back to the people who tried to break you." 2 days later, against the doctor's orders, Clara walked into the obsidian throne room. She stood beside Dominic, not behind him. In the center of the room, kneeling in chains, were Alpha Sterling, Lady Sophia, and Brody. The silence was suffocating. "Treason!" Dominic's voice boomed, shaking the stained glass windows. "You conspired to kill the prince. You struck at the crown." "It was her!" Lady Sophia shrieked, pointing at Sterling. "I just wanted her gone. I was supposed to be queen." "You will never be queen," Dominic snarled. "Sterling and Sophia, for your crimes against the royal house, you are sentenced to the obsidian mines. You will dig in the dark for the rest of your miserable lives." Guards dragged the screaming pair away. That left Brody. The man who had rejected Clara for being weak now knelt before her, trembling. "Clara," Brody whispered, eyes wide with fear. "Please, we grew up together." Dominic looked at Clara. "He is yours to judge my queen." The court gasped. Queen. The title was official. Clara looked at Brody. She didn't feel anger anymore, just pity. "I won't kill him," she said softly. "That's too easy." She stepped closer. "You despised Omega's, Brody. You treated us like dirt. So now you will be one." She turned to Dominic. "Strip his rank." Dominic smirked. "Done. You are no longer your alpha blood, Brody. You are an Omega. You will spend your days scrubbing the floors of the very diner where you mocked her." Brody slumped to the floor, defeated. It was a fate worse than death. 6 months later, the winter snow had melted from the royal gardens. Clara sat on a stone bench, watching Toby run through the grass. He was laughing, a sound that had been missing from the palace for years. Dominic came up behind her, wrapping his massive arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "He looks happy," Dominic murmured, nuzzling her neck. "We all are." Clara smiled, leaning back into his warmth. Toby suddenly stopped running. He picked a bright yellow wildflower and sprinted back to them, breathless and beaming. He held the flower up to Clara. "For you, Mum," he chirped. Clara froze. Tears pricked her eyes as she took the flower. It was the first time he had called her that. "Thank you, baby," she whispered. Dominic pulled them both into a tight embrace. The rejected waitress was gone. In her place stood the queen of the Obsidian Pack, the mother of a prince and the beloved mate of a king. She had lost a pack that hated her only to find a family that would burn the world down to keep her safe. And so the waitress who was tossed aside like garbage became the most powerful woman in the kingdom. Brody spent the rest of his days scrubbing floors in the very diner where he had mocked her, watching from a distance as Clara's face appeared on the news beloved by a nation. King Dominic, once the cold and ruthless Blood King, found his warmth again, proving that even the darkest hearts can be healed by the right light. It serves as a reminder that true nobility isn't found in bloodlines or bank accounts, but in the courage to be kind when the world is cruel and the strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Wow. Talk about the ultimate karma. From scrubbing floors to sitting on the throne. Clara definitely got the last laugh. What did you guys think of Brody's punishment? Do you think living as an Omega was enough, or should the king have thrown him in the mines with his father? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy cheating revenge story coming up next week that you do not want to miss. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.